Okay, so I'm starting this chapter number 4. Chapter number 4 is algorithms and flowchart. In this chapter, earlier I have discussed with you that what are algorithms. So, an algorithm is a sequence of steps. It is a series of steps that must be followed. Algorithm can be, for example, if you are making a cup of tea or you are working on any sequence of steps, set of steps in order to complete your task. That is a program, that is an algorithm. For example, if you are making a cup of tea and you have your steps one by one in a sequence, that is also an algorithm. However, there are two ways in which you can design an algorithm. One is a flowchart and the other one is a pseudocode. I explained you in class as well that what is a flowchart. A flowchart is when we add a set of symbols together to solve a problem. And a pseudocode is basically one of the way that how both of them are a ways to design an algorithm. So when it comes to a flowchart, they have a set of symbols added together to solve a problem, and a flowchart has different symbols that we are going to discuss. We have also discussed in our class that what is a pseudocode. A pseudocode is a language, a graphical language that is used to display an algorithm. That means that it has some commands related to English terms, so it is easy for anyone to understand them as well. So what is meant by an algorithm? An algorithm is a sequence of steps, set of steps that is designed to complete an instruction. How an algorithm can be represented? Algorithm can be represented with the example of two, such as a flowchart and a pseudocode. Now, what are flowchart and pseudocodes? Again, a flowchart is a diagrammatical aid, a visual aid, a pictorial representation that uses symbols such as space, shapes, and arrows to make an algorithm. Whereas pseudocode, when it comes to a pseudocode, I do not use symbols, but I use statements, structured statements. There has no specific syntax as well, but they uses words such as input, output to complete the task. So whenever I'm working with a pseudocode and I'm working with a flowchart, these are some of the key terminologies that are always added into our program, into our software. First of all, I first check that what data has to be inputted, what data has to be added into an algorithm, and what data has to be displayed into an algorithm. What is going to be my action performed during this way, and what is going to be my decision making. Our decision making is basically a comparison that if the condition is true, if the condition is not true. And last I have is a loop as well that goes and goes and goes. So these are one, two, three, four, five statements that five statement. No, these are five processes that when it comes to a flowchart or when it comes to an algorithm, I first check any data that has to be entered into an algorithm. I check that if the data is being displayed correctly out to the user as well. I check my process or actions performs on that data. I check my decision making to check that if the code is working or not. And I also check the loop, right? I also discussed with you the input and outputs of an flowchart that, for example, if you want to output something, you are going to use this symbol, just like, for example, this output hello world. If you want to output, you are going to use the same symbol. Again, for start and stop, this is a circle, rounded circle. And when it comes to a pseudocode has simple words like output, input. So output, write or print, they have the same concept. It's up to you what you wish to write. So identify the symbols for start and stop. You can do it. These are the symbols for the start and stop as well. And describe the stages in the flowchart. You can define the stages as well. That these stages include input, output, process, decision making, loop. And now, if you wish to work with a process is used in a rectangular box, and different types of processes in a flowchart can be. This is basically an action that has to be performed. In a program, it usually means that any change that is made to a variable or if it is storing any value, right? For example, right in front of you, these are some examples of a process. If you want to add anything, it it goes like my number equals to 10 plus 3. If you want to subtract anything, you can use this operator. You have multiplication, division, you have power of, then you have mod and div as well. I explained you in class that modulus division gives you the remainder back, whereas div gives you the whole number back. You can also complete the what is the process, what action does the operator power process, write a statement, describe the stages in a flowchart. Processes is basically an action that I'm performing on the program. This usually means that when you are entering any value into your variable, so you might be able to change it as well. Process, for example, you can give x plus y, x minus y, x multiplied by y, x divided by y. For example, 10 is to power 3. This means that this is going to be multiplied by 3. So all of these are the examples of your process. Now, when I'm specifically referring to this modulus division, now 10 mod 3 gives you back 1. This means that I'm only giving you back my remainder, right? 10 mod 3 gives you one remainder back. I hope that you know that what is a remainder, what is a quotient, what is a divisor. So whenever you are going to implement this mod function, this is going to give you back the remainder. Whereas when it comes to an integer division, this gives the whole number back. For example, 10 div 3, 20 div 6. Now you are going to have the whole number that is left there back. So what is the difference, or what is the purpose of this modulus and integer division? A modulus division is when the remainder is given from a division, and integer division is where only the whole number is given from the division. And you can represent these flow charts process with the example of a rectangular box. For if you are taking an input and output, you have that parallelogram, right? However, if you are working with a process, that means you only need to use the simple rectangles. So here are some examples as well. For example, the mathematical calculation for the variable. For example, if I am writing my number equals to 10 plus 3, this is an example of a pseudocode, but you can also store it into a flowchart as well, because this is an example of a process and you can add it into your rectangle box. For example, if I am adding these two numbers, this means that I am storing the value 30. If this is my number plus 13, this means that now it is going to take the number that is stored in my number and add it to 3. That makes it 13, and 13 plus 3 gives it 16. So putting a value into a variable, this is to be known as your assignment task. So for example, if I give you any assignment, that means that I'm assigning you some work. So however, if you are going to use an assignment assignment operator, that means that you are giving your variable a value. For example, assign my number to this, assign any variable to this. So assignment literal means that you have to give a variable a value. So for example, in this process box, you can see that your any value that is a new number. First of all, you need to understand that new number is an assignment. A new number is a variable. What is a variable? A variable is any data placeholder that stores any value and that can be changed. So the value that is in my number, this is going to be multiplied by 3 into 8. That means that a process is going to be implemented on this. Is this clear to you? Do you have any confusion still now?
No, sir, it's clear.
So right in front of you, these are two flowcharts. Can you explain me what is the difference between both of them?
Mm, the first flowchart asks you to enter a number.
Then,
Then it saves the number as num1.
mm,
Then it asks you to enter a second number,
mm,
and then it saves that number as num2. and then in the process box it divides number 1 with number 2,
Mhm.
and it will output the result.
Why do you think they are only using the same shape for throughout this program, like these three boxes?
Because those three are input and output, that's why.
Good. And I hope that it
Ex-
is also clear to you that when I'm working with an start or stop, I use these symbols, right?
yes.
Now here you will notice that I have another symbol as well. That is this one, a rounded, a circle with an alphabet. Now, what is this symbol? This is basically a new symbol that has been introduced here. That means that this is a circle with a letter inside. This is basically a connector symbol. Sometimes, if your flowchart is really long, then it is convenient to split it into small proportions. So you can do it by using the connector symbols and where the flowchart continues. The algorithm takes in two numbers, number one and number two, and divides them and store it in the answer. It then results you the correct answer. So what is a pseudocode? The pseudocode is again using the process. So right here you can see it as well that you have a question. This is a worked example. There is a program that needs to ask a person's age and tell them that how old they are in 50 years. So they have given you some stages of a flowchart. So in your exam you can have these types of questions as well. So first of all, this is step one, this is step two, this is step three, this is step four. Now you need to identify the symbols and you need to go on to this. So first of all, it says that ask them to enter their age, take the age as input, add 50 to their age, and output the age. So you can see as well that start, output your age, input age, new age equals to age plus 50, and then I'm also displaying my desired value. You can even have questions into your exam in which you have to convert your flowchart into a pseudocode. So the easiest method to work onto these is just to understand their basic processes, right? For example, if I want to input which symbol I'm going to use, how I'm going to use it, output, how am I going to use it, if I'm implementing it with a variable of for this, there is a function, how I'm going to do it, right? So do you have all clear till here? Do you have any confusions?
No, sir, it's clear.
Now, the next thing I'm going to discuss is the decision making and flowchart. So basically, decision making is to be known as your comparison and selection. That means that if you compare two values such as x and y, for example, if this statement is being true, so that you can make a decision that if it is either true or not, or if it is false. So in decision making, you need to make two decisions based on your idea. For example, if your statement is true, then how you are going to perform the task, and if your statement is false, how you are going to perform it as well. So in decision making, you are making use of comparison. And what is the use of comparison? That means that you are comparing two items of data that results in true or false. So either if they are true or either if they are false, you need to write their answers, or you need to write their processes, that if it is true, what am I supposed to do? Or if it is not true, what else I'm going to do? So decision making are basically statements that involves a comparison, and they can be either true or they can be either false as well. For example, if the result is true, then some code is run. If it is false, then different codes can be run and can be skipped as well. Right. For example, as you can see that these are comparisons and these comparisons have different symbols. First of all, this is this operator. That means that if 10 is greater than 5, that means it is true. However, if it is not true, then it becomes false. This is an example of a less than. For example, if 10 is less than 5 is obviously false, but if 5 is greater than 10, it's true. You also have the operator of greater than or equal to. That means that if 10 is greater than equals to 5, it is true. Or if 10 is greater than equals to 10, it is also true. However, if 5 is greater than 10, is false. You also have the option of less than equal to. Less than equal to is if 10 is greater than equals to 5 is false. If 10 is greater than equals to 10 is true. If 5 is greater than equals to 10 is true. So I'm just explaining you that how you can implement these operators either into your flowchart or either into your pseudocode. For example, this is a equals to sign. 10 equals to 5 is false. 10 is equals to 10 is true. So you can also have things like that, that 10 is equals to 10 and it is mostly true. Again, this stands for not equal to, and now this exclamation mark stands for not equal to. For example, 10 exclamation mark equals to 10. This means this is false. And this can be also considered as a not equal to sign. For example, 5 is not equal to 10. Yes, it is not equal to, so it is 10. So you also need to understand the comparisons as well. For example, if you want to implement a flowchart, you can also use single selection as well. For example, the selection must be in the form of a question. For example, if 10 is greater than 5, is it true or false? So whenever you want to make some decision, you need to use a decision diamond. You need to use a decision diamond. You also need to understand the symbols as well, because only with the help of these you are able to work correctly into your flowcharts. So there are two options from a selection box: true and false, yes or no. This means selection has two arrows, two flow lines, that either yes or either no, that needs to be labeled. For example, if this condition is true, right here you can see that this is a decision written, but if this decision is not true, you can go this way. If this decision is true, then you can go this way. For example, right here, you can see that this is an example of a flowchart. So first of all, I have started the flowchart. I added the age. Now I discussed with you that is your age is greater than equals to 18. If it's yes, that means that you are old enough. However, if your age is not greater than 18, that means that you are not too young. So are you getting the decision making process? Do you have any confusion?
No confusion, sir. That's clear.
Have you completed this in school?
Uh, we haven't done this yet.
So what are you working on school with?
We were still on process.
Okay. So it is even better that we are completing it far ahead in the school. It would be even easier for you to question your teacher in your school, right?
Yes, sir.
So now this flowchart starts by the user adding an age. The decision statement asks if your age is greater than or equals to 18. If the result is yes, that means that it outputs you are too old enough. However, if it is no, it outputs you are too young. So multiple selections are right here. If your age is greater than 10, that means that you can do it. However, if your age is not greater than 10, then it asks you that if your age is greater than 20 or not. So you can also make a decision, but right here you can see that you have your multiple selection boxes, just like nested statements and pseudocode as well. So in flowchart, you also can have nested charts as well, or multiple selection boxes that defines you that if the age is less than 10, if it is not, then it can go straight to check that if your age is less than 20 or not, and so on, you can make a decision. So right here, our flowchart is completed. And the next thing that we need to discuss is pseudocodes. So, do you have any confusion till now?
No, sir, it's clear.
Now I'm starting this pseudocode. So, can you define me what is a pseudocode?
Um, a pseudocode is
Hmm.
mm, it's basically like a language that can like it's used to display a algorithm.
Algorithm is basically a series of steps that has to be followed. We
Yes.
follow a lot of algorithms in our life without even realizing that they are algorithms. For example, following a recipe or following a list of instructions. These both are an example of algorithms. Why is that? Because it is a sequence of steps.
Yes.
It is a set of steps.
Mm.
So before you write an algorithm on your computer, you can design them with two different ways, such as a flowchart or such as an algorithm. So pseudocode means that you have no specific syntax and you don't have to use it as well. And it doesn't always follow the settled format. However, it uses a more structured English sentence. What is a pseudocode? A pseudocode is just a language that is used to display an algorithm. A pseudocode is a language that designs your algorithm. A pseudocode is a way that represents your algorithm. A flowchart is also a way that represents your algorithm. Just like pseudocode does not use symbols, but it uses structured statements. There is no specific syntax rule that is to be followed, but it uses keywords such as input, output, and so on. This is a pseudocode. So now when I'm referring to a pseudocode, I'm going to refer to the use some selectional keywords. And what are those selection keywords? They are if and then. The question is in the flow chart is replaced with if and the question. If means that if it is really the condition, if it is true. For example, I can write that if my age is greater than 18 or if my age is less than 18, that means that all the code that runs when the condition is true goes beneath the if. And this is finished with an and if. This is a loop. It always starts with if and it ends with and. This is like a question mark that if, for example, if I'm taking your class, if I'll take your class 1 hour afterwards, if I don't take your class, that means that if you are using an if, you also need to display an output as well. Like for example, if the value in age is more than 18, then the output message will be displayed. What is going to be displayed? Like if the age is greater than 18, then output you are old enough. So first of all, you need to understand that uh, again, if is basically a question, if is basically a selectional keyword that if your age is greater than 18, then what are you desired to do? That means that you need to output that you are old enough. So an if statement can have else as well. Else means that what else I can do if this is not true. Right? For example, you can see that if age is greater than 18, then output you are old enough. But what if it is not true? That means that now you can use else. Else means that yes, this statement is not true and you are not old enough, and it ends with and. So are you getting this?
Yes, sir.
Just give me 1 minute due to Azan. Okay, so when it comes to a pseudocode as well, you can also use multiple conditions as well. Multiple conditions can be created or nested conditions can be created using an else if statement. Each condition has its own else if. You can even put else in the end of the case. For example, in this example, I'm going to check that if each of the conditions are checked in the order they are written or not. If one of the condition is found to be true, then the code within it runs and then it jumps to the end. For example, you can see here that if your cost is greater than equals to 100, that means that your cost should be greater than 100 and your cost should be equals to 100 as well. That means that you need to output that this is far too expensive. This is your condition one. What is it? This is your condition one. However, if this is not true, then you can go on to the second else if statement and you can write that you can check that now if your cost is greater than equals to 80 or not. If it is true, then you can print that's a bit too expensive. Again, however, if this is also not true, that means you can go to the third condition and you can check that if your cost is greater than 60 or not. If it is greater than 60, then you can print this is reasonable. Again, if this statement is not true, that means that now you can add another else if this is your fourth condition and you need to check that if your cost is greater than 40 or not. If it is true, that means that you can output this. And last, you have the last case as well, fourth and fifth case. The fifth case states that I think that's too cheap and it ends here. So you also need to understand that if you are starting an if loop, it needs to be ended with an end if. and you can write as much as else if you wanted to. So is this clear to you? Hmm? Is this clear to you?
Yes, sir, it's clear.
Okay, so we are keeping it today till here. In our next class, I'm going to start this case of AND case.